Good morning, Honors Math 2. I thought I would start out by showing you what we have left to look at. 3 weeks, all we have left. And then after this date, there will be time for us to make up things, any homework you need to make up, tests you need to make up, what else we need to do. But this is the last 3 weeks. I will attach this and probably email it out. This is going to be a little bit harder, less graphing, more solving, and different ways to solve, not by factoring, some factoring, but other ways you can solve. So we're going to be doing these two this week, and we're going to start. So here is our packet for notes. We're going to start. This is actually just notes just to get you going. It's some of the stuff you're going to see on the first worksheet, but just to get you going. And first of all, we're going to talk about, this is an equation in standard form. Remember, it's not the easiest way to graph. It really doesn't tell you anything, except the C does tell you the y-intercept. But other than that, it doesn't really help you. I can't spell. You got the idea. I forgot the ER. It really doesn't help you much other than that. But that's the standard form, and you can change it to different things. You guys learned how to change it into... by foiling it out and changing it into different things. So today we're going to focus on a special type. It's called a perfect square trinomial. So trinomial means it has 3 terms. Perfect square are numbers that are something squared. 4, 2 squared. 9, 3 squared. Okay, so this is just an easy factoring. You're going to write your answer like this. And so we're going to start with x squared plus 12x plus 36 in factored form. Okay, well, what multiplies to be 36 and adds to be 12? That's 6 and 6. 6 plus 6 is 12, and 6 times 6 is 36, but we would write this like this. Anything that's a perfect square trinomial will be written like that. So you'll notice this number is 6 squared, and that is 6 times 2. Same thing on this. What multiplies to be 64 but adds to be negative 16? This would be x minus 8, or x minus 8 squared. Negative 8 times negative 8, 64, negative 8 times 2. So these are always in this form. 2 times some number plus some number squared. And this last number is always a perfect square. So these are going to be called perfect squares. Which are 1, 4, 9, 4 squared would be 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, and we can keep going, 121, 144, 169. Usually we don't get too much past that, but you can keep going. Okay, so every single one of these is going to be that. Now, what if they don't give you the C value and you have to figure it out? Well, these are your numbers that your C can be. They can be, I could take that back. It could be a fraction, and we'll talk about those. But this one, what you do, remember I told you this was 2 times this? So you take that number divided by 2, and that gives you what that number would you be squaring. Okay, so for example, this was half of 12 is 6. 6 squared is 36. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So this would be x squared plus 8x plus 16. And that factor x plus 4 squared. Notice when we take the half, that's the number in there. Half of 36, 6. Half of negative 16, negative 8. So same thing here. Half of negative 12 is negative 6. Negative 6 squared is 36. So we write this as x squared plus, minus 12x plus 36, or x minus 6 squared. So whatever this sign is here, that's what's going to be in the middle. Okay, now those are really nice because they're nice even numbers. What if it's not even? Still take half of it, but I wouldn't change it into a decimal. Just leave it. And you're going to square that. Still wouldn't change it into a decimal. Just leave it as 9 over 4. It would be x squared plus 3x plus 9 over 4, and that factor to x plus 3 over 2 squared. So don't change it into 1.5 and then make this 1.5 squared. Too hard. Just leave it as fraction. It's easier. Okay, so this is just an introduction notes. Now we're going to actually get into the notes on how you're going to do the first worksheet. Okay, so again, standard form, basic vertex form. Okay, we are going to change everything into this form because this is much easier to graph. H and K is your vertex. This is a process. You're going to move the C term to the other side of the equation. That's the first thing you do. If it's already over to the other side of the equation, you can skip step 1. Find a new C term, and the new C term is just exactly what we did. It needs to be a perfect square. 1, 4, 9, 16, those numbers. Add the C term to both sides. Remember when you solve an equation, whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other side. So you can't just add thing to one side. Factor the right hand. This is actually should be the left hand side because I always leave it on the left. And then you're going to move everything back to one side. Okay, so before we get going, we're just going to practice finding the C again. Remember, you take half of that number and square it. So this would be 64. Half of that number and square it. This would be positive 16. Notice these are always going to be positive. Half of that number and square it. This was 9/4. So when you get to the worksheet, you're going to see that they're going to ask you to do that on the first ones, and they're going to ask you to write it in factored form. So your answer is this and this. Whatever, if this is plus, this is plus. If this is minus, this is minus. If this is plus, this is plus. Okay, now we're going to get the meat. Now we're going to change standard form into vertex form. And this is what it's going to look like. So you're going to take and you're going to move, that is not a perfect square, first of all. And nothing multiplies to be 14 adds to be negative 12. It is not factorable. So you're going to move that over to the other side. So basically this is 0 and you're going to move the 14 to the other side. And you're going to notice I'm going to put a square. Actually, they have parentheses. I like it square because, hey, completing the square, might as well make it a square. Mine look like rectangles, but you got the idea. So all I did is I moved the 14 to the other side. Okay, now I'm going to complete that square. Well, remember you take half that number, which would be -6, and you square it. Again, these have to be some number that's a perfect square. 1, 4, 9, so forth. Whatever you do one side of the equation, you have to do the other side. So what I've done so far, step 1, I moved the C to the other side. Step 2, I found the perfect square. Step 3, I added that new to both sides. Now I'm going to factor this. Well, that would be x minus 6 squared. -6 times -6 is 36. -6 plus -6 is -12. Add like terms over here. That is going to give me 22. And now I have to write it in vertex form. So vertex form looks like this. So it has to have y equals. So I'm going to have to move the 22 back to the other side. And so my answer would be y equals x minus 6 squared minus 22. And it says identify the vertex. The vertex would be 6, -22. Remember, the vertex is the opposite of h. Okay. Because it's always going to be opposite because that's usually a minus there. So we're just going to keep practicing that process with the next page. Okay, so we're always going to write in vertex form, and we are always going to identify the vertex. Again, this is not a perfect square, so I'm going to move it to the other side. So x squared, I like to keep this on this side. I'm going to complete the square, so I'm going to put a square. Realize that C always becomes the opposite when you move it over. And then what's going to go in the box? 49. Half of 14 is 7. 7 squared, 49. I'm going to write this as x plus 7 squared. You always write it as something squared. It's called a perfect square trinomial. That's why you complete the square, so you can write it like that. And -20 plus 49 is 29. And then your last step is to move it back over and write it as an equation. And identify the vertex. it would be -7, -29. It is always the opposite of h. Okay, so same thing here, move the c over. This time when we move the c over, we're going to have to add 5. So the 5 goes to the other side, because it's not a perfect square. Sorry. Okay, for some reason, people miss this one. Half of 1, -2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. People put 2 there. This would be x minus 1 squared. Remembering half of that number. And this is a positive 6. Subtract 6, move it back over so you have a writing equation. And your vertex is 1, -6. And we could graph that. Now it would be very hard to graph otherwise because this is not factorable. Everything you did in the last problems were factorable. Okay, so you could try these two on your own, pause it. Sorry, a helicopter over my house. Pause them, get rid of the helicopter's noises, and then see if you get them right, or you can just listen. So I'm going to move the 7 over again. So x squared minus 8x plus complete the square equals -7 plus complete the square. Half of 8 is 4, 4 squared is 16. X minus 4 squared. -7 plus 16 is 9. Move the 9 back over so you have an equation. And your vertex would be 4, -9. Same thing here, move the 4 over. Half of -6 is -3. Sometimes I like to write that there, so don't forget. -3 squared is 9. Move the 5 back over. Y equals x minus 3 squared minus 5. So your vertex is 3, -5. Always the opposite of the number inside the parentheses. Okay, so that was, once you get that, you got that. Now these are a little bit different. Why are they different? Numbers in front. Okay, we've never had a number in front, but usually that's your A value. And remember, that tells you if the graph is narrow, wide, upside down. So we got to deal with that. Now I want you to first notice that we're still going to do the first thing the same. We're going to move the 3 to the other side. So we have 2x squared minus 8x equals -3. Now if you notice, I haven't put a square in yet because I need to do one new step. GCF. Only on this side. So I'm going to take out a GCF. And now I'm going to put a square in. Okay, now look at this side. If you distributed, you get that. If you distribute that, you get 2 times the square. So whatever you do to one side, you got to do the other side. So on this side, this is the main mistake people do, is they forget a 2 there. You have to put a 2 there. So they're both, you're on this side, you just added 2 times the square. This one you have to do 2 times the square. Everything else is the same. Take half that number, which is -2. -2 squared is 4. Factor that, leave that 2 in front. X minus 2 squared. This would be -3 plus 8, which is 5. And then you're going to move the 5 back over. Move this up a little bit. So you get y equals x minus 2 squared minus 5. Whoops, I forgot the 2 in front. That 2 doesn't change your vertex, so again it makes it more narrow of a graph. And your vertex is still 2, -5. So I'm going to do 2 more like that so you guys get the idea. Again, first step is to move the 9 over. I haven't put a square yet because I need this just to be x squared before I complete the square. I'm going to take out a GCF of 5. And this one's very similar to the other one. And remember, you can't just put a square here, you have to put 5 times the square, because everything here would be distributed by 5. That's going to be the same as the last number. Half of -4 is -2. -2 squared is 4. This would be 9 plus 20, which is 29. And then you got to move the 29 back over. So you get y equals 5, x minus 2 squared minus 29, and our vertex would be 2, negative 29. This would be a very narrow graph. Okay, last one. Just a point, if all these have a GCF, I still wouldn't do it. I'd still move the 90 over. So I'm going to move this 90 over by adding 90. Take out a GCF of 8. Make sure it's the same number as that. If you can't take out a GCF, then completing the square is not the option to do. All of them you should be able to. Put a square. Don't forget the 8 on this square. You'll get the answer wrong. Half of negative 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1. This would be 98. And subtract. I'm hoping you guys can see this. So our vertex would be 1, negative 98. Good luck graphing that. So that is completing the square. So your worksheet's going to look very similar to that. The ones you're going to make a mistake on are the ones that have the numbers in front. Be very careful with those. Okay, good luck. The next thing you get to learn is solving by completing the square. You'll be surprised you use this a ton in Math 3. Well, good luck. Bye.